I shall begin with two chants in Sanskrit. The first one is the salutation to my teachers, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. The second one is from the Rig Veda, which is the most ancient of Indian scriptures. And it means, may you be united in your prayer. May you be united in your goal. May you have a common purpose. May you be united in your deliberations. May you be united in your heart, united in your intentions, and perfect be the harmony and union amongst you. Namo Matre Namo Namah Shri Aurobindo Namo Namah Suryadvaya Swarupaya Padmadvaya Swarupine Suryadvaya Swarupaya Padmadvaya Swarupine Chidakashaya Murtaya Namo Namostu Namo Samano mantra samiti samani samanam mana sahachittamesham samano mantra samiti samani samanam mana sahachittamesham samano mantra samiti samani samano mantra samiti samani samanam mana sahachittamesham samano mantra samiti samani samanam mana sahachittamesham samaniva akuti samana hridayaniva samaniva akuti samana hridayaniva समानमस्तु वो मनो यथा वह सुसहासति समानो मंत्र समिति समानि समानं मनः सह चित्तमेषाम् समानं मनः सह चित्तमेषाम् A Bengali devotional song. It means, I walk the roads of time on this earth with you as my guide. I carry you in my consciousness like the sky. O matchless Lord, let my life move along thy immense path like a star, silent and calm without grief. You pour your grace into my cup, the cup of my being. O Master unique, your grace surrounds me. I know that in spite of all appearances to the contrary, your victory is certain. You will come again like the dawn after the night. ধরণী পথে তোমারে বরিল তোমার চলি একা ধরণী পথে তোমারে বরিল তোমার চেতন মাঝে আকাশ চেতন মাঝে আকাশ তোমারে ধরি মোর চলায় চলিন একা ধরণী পথে তোমারে বরিল হে নিরূপম জীবন মম তোমার পথে চলো সে যে তারকাসম গতি প্রভায় হে নিরূপম জীবন মম তোমার পথে চলো সে যে তারকাসম গতি প্রভায় চলিন একা ধরণী পথে তোমারে বরিল করুণা তব ঢালিলে মোর আধারে চির হে বল্লভ আছো যে তুমি আমারে ঘিরে ধরণীর মরম আছো যে তুমি আমারে ঘিরে ধরণীর মরম তব বিজয় সুনিশ্চয় তব বিজয় সুনিশ্চয় আসিবে পুনঃ প্রভাত সম বিশ্বময় রবি চলিন একা ধরণী পথে তোমারে বরিল চেতন মাঝে আকাশ চেতন মাঝে আকাশ তোমারে ধরি মোর চলাই I shall end with another song in Bengali which celebrates the victory of the divine on earth which will come someday, the coming of the divine kingdom, the new life and the new glory. সূর্য বিজয়ের দিল আকাশে শিরেতে কিরীট গড়িয়ান পরম করুণার মেছে পারাবার নবীন যুগের বিভূষণ সূর্য বিজয়ের দিল আকাশের শিরেতে কিরীট গড়িয়ান পরম করুণার নেমেছে পারাবার নবীন যুগের বিভূষণ কত যে হলো রাত ধরিলে সে হাত এবার চলো নাথ নবীন পন্থায় আগুয়ান সূর্য বিজয়ের দিল আকাশের শিরেতে কিরীট গড়িয়ান পরম করুণার নেমেছে পারাবার নবীন যুগের বিভূষণ আমার অনাগত জীবন অনাহত তোমার সৃষ্টির চরণে আনিলে অর্ণব দানিলে গৌরব উজ্জ্বল তমহে শরণে নূতন জন্মতে নূতন মন্ত্রতে নূতন ছন্দতে করাও বনির আজি স্নান নূতন জন্মতে নূতন মন্ত্রতে নূতন ছন্দতে করাও ধরণীর আজি স্নান সূর্য বিজয়ের দিল আকাশের শিরেতে কিরীট গড়িয়ান পরম করুণার নেমেছে পারাবার নবীন যুগের বিভূষণ
among the spiritual luminaries of the present century who have given a this worldly orientation to the spiritual aspiration of humanity, change the direction of the flight of the mind and soul from the beyond to the immediate concerns on earth, the name of the mother easily comes among the foremost. She it was who came to the east from the west, fully representing the best spirit of Western culture, having imbibed the genius of the Middle East, of Europe, of the older traditions of North Africa, and fused the old spirit of spirituality with the emerging spirit in the awakening Asia, and established a firm ideal, a positive ideal for man to pursue, to translate the ancient dream of the kingdom of God upon earth. She was a lady from France whose birth centenary is being celebrated this year all over a grateful India and in several parts of the world, in honor of which occasion the government of India has issued a special stamp, postal stamp, and whose talks to children and to seekers run into about 15 volumes, which are being released to the public as a centenary edition of her works. In fact, it is wrong to call them her writings because she never wrote any. She did not believe in writing books, in writing papers. She had a certain abhorrence to academic philosophy. She believed in living the truth, not thinking about the truth, speculating about the truth, but in living it in day-to-day life. This woman was born 100 years ago in Paris to well-to-do parents. She carried in her blood the traditions of Turkey, Egypt, Portuguese, and the French. Even when she was a small child, she was aware in a mysterious way that there was a mission to fulfill. And when she was 5 years old, she began to see a light over her head constantly. Her child brain could not understand what it was, but she felt instinctively that it was God, the divine. And, as she told me once, since then, she never did a thing without reference to that light. She was only fire. A strong, obstinate willed child who insisted on having her own way. She was not particularly religious, as the term goes. But when she was about 11 or 10, she started getting certain experiences in her sleep. A number of spiritual and occult teachers would come and give her certain instructions. Some of them she was to meet on earth in her later years. And so an inner life was being built when she was asleep. And when she reached 13, she had a continuous experience for a number of months. As soon as she went to bed, she would find herself floating in the sky, soaring high and high, and her dress, the gown, elongating itself. And on the right, there would be a stream of men, women, and children, all in distress, coming and touching the hem of her garment and going back smiling, healed, whole. On the other side, there was, she witnessed an old man with a smile on his face, encouraging her. She was to identify him later as the man of sorrows. It was then that she understood that one of the objects or missions of her life was to work and carry succor to the distressed, peace to the suffering. And she knew that no human strength could do that. She had an instinctive feeling that the strength had to be drawn from a divine source within herself. And so she started striving to find out that source within herself, but there was none in the Europe of that day to guide her. In that moment of anguish, an old resident, Indian resident of Paris, gave her a copy, an old book, an imperfect French translation, since she didn't know English, of the Bhagavad Gita, and told her, regard Lord Krishna as the indwelling deity in yourself. And she says, when she took back the book home, she was amazed that there could be a book on earth which could give such specific detailed directions to realize, to find and actualize the divine presence in oneself. She was that intense, and she took to it with such ardor that within a month, she says, that the work was done. There was a continuous communion, uninterrupted contact, identity, established with the divine presence in herself. Also, it was at that time that a French translation of Swami Vivekananda's lectures in America on Raja Yoga reached her hands. And both these books helped her immensely. By the time she reached 20, she had attained a remarkable proficiency in music, in art, in higher mathematics, an unusual combination with spiritual interests. She became a center, a salon, as they call in French, of artists, musicians, literateurs, and a political exile from the Russia of the Tsar during those days, at the end of the last century or the beginning of the present. They had a meeting every week. They would read papers on certain topical subjects with the intended spiritual approach, dreams, thoughts, political unrest, destiny of nations, language, and so on. At that time, a number of our young friends told her that we would very much have liked to follow you in your quest, but we have our responsibilities to our wives and children. We have to earn our bread, and by the time we come back home after attending our work, we have hardly any energy left. It was at that time, she says, that she had a feeling that if by God's grace she could somehow organize a small society, a small world, where everybody could be assured of the minimum comforts of life, so that nobody would have to spend time and energy in earning for what may be called the creature comforts. She felt that all the energies would go towards the higher quest, and what a wonderful thing it would be. But that remained a dream in her consciousness. It was at that time also that she came across a remarkable couple, a Polish gentleman called Monsieur Thion, an occultist of a great order. His wife, also an occultist, but additionally one who was spiritually sensitive, who combined in herself a spiritual consciousness with occult power, a lady, an English lady from the Isle of Wight. She met them, and Providence brought about a meeting so that she, who had her own occult experiences on her own account, she learned many more things from this couple. She went with them to Algiers in North Africa, where they were living at that time, and learned many of the processes of occult practice, gaining knowledge and control over the processes of nature. Her teacher, Madame Thion, of whom she was very fond, she was such a remarkable person that once, when she was tired, she asked this young girl to come with her, and she laid down on her bed. She asked her to give a grapefruit, and she put that grapefruit on her stomach and told her, "You come back after half an hour." When she went back, Madame Thion was fresh, blooming, but the grapefruit had shrunk to this much. She had learned to draw the energy, life energy, from the fruit. It was from her that Mother specially learned the art of drawing sustenance from life energy and reducing her dependence on material food. For material food, physical food, even as it is being eaten, it eats the person who swallows it. So she wanted to minimize this wear and tear caused by eating material food. She was one who always believed in drawing from the universal life energy the necessary sustenance. And still she would take little bit of grape juice or mashed food, rice. And when she was asked why she needed to take that at all, she said it was out of respect to the law of matter. One cannot and should not break a law unless one first changes the law. There is a law of matter, that it is sustained by the infusion of fresh matter. And till that law was conquered, changed, she did not want to defy it. That was the way, a characteristic approach of hers. Always to proceed through natural methods. Never perform miracles. She would always say that any change, any cure effected by miracle will only remain a miracle. It will not last. And she learned the art of controlling nature elements. When she was coming back with her teachers from Africa, there was a huge storm. And all the people who were in the deck went back to their cabins. The captain had a long face, and it looked as if in a few moments the ship would sink. At that time, Theo called her and said, "Go to the deck, see what's the matter, and stop this." So mother went up on the deck, and she looked with her subtle sight. She found a large company of these elemental spirits enjoying themselves hugely by causing all this confusion and waiting for the ship to sink. She took them to task and asked them to stop this nonsense. They laughed, stopped, the storm abated, and everything continued peaceful. This she was to repeat this kind of action for the good of humanity many times in her life. She used this occult knowledge for helping mankind, relieving the distress. She had attained that efficiency that she could come out of her physical body in her subtle body, come out of that subtle body in a still subtle body, and repeat this 12 exteriorization 12 times, and then go in her causal body. She was to explain later to children at the center of education in our ashram how she could go, and she had to go, and she said she would teach people who were prepared for that discipline how to go back to the origin of creation at a time when man had not appeared, when there was only plant creation. Also to the summits of existence, from where this creation started. She would describe what things were at that time, how things originated. This question came up when one of the girls asked her, "Is it true, mother, that we women are inferior?" all religions, all traditions say that man is superior and we are inferior. And we are denied participation in certain ceremonies. Mother told her, I too have wondered about this, because I have all along watched this belief both in the East and the West, that women are not allowed to participate in certain things. So she said she got curious, and in her tranced state, she went there from where all things originated, to see whether there is any truth in this differentiation of sex, the supposed superiority of man and the inferiority of woman. And she said she was amazed to find that there was absolutely no difference between the male and the female. On the other hand, the conception of male and female on the higher planes of existence has a quite different meaning. And what she said is corroborated by some of the ancient hymns of the Vedas, which I have studied. There, the male is the consciousness, the divine consciousness, which presides over a movement, which initiates a movement, which watches a movement. The female represents the executive energy, the methodizing energy. In other words, this is a static consciousness, and the female is the dynamic consciousness. It is only, she said, at this material physical level that nature, for purposes of her own, has created this differentiation of bodies for her purpose. Beyond the physical earth, sexual differentiation of bodies does not obtain. And she said, a soul in a male body and a soul in a female body are derived from the same divine origin. There is none is superior or inferior. And she insisted on having the same program of education, training, physical culture, both to boys and girls, against the prevailing medical opinion. No disaster has taken place, and the whole of India today is copying up what she achieved in this direction. She, round about 1910, she got curious. I'm anticipating. Among the teachers who was guiding, giving instructions, she used to see one particular figure who would come more often than others. And though she at that time she knew nothing of Indian names, she was led to call him Krishna. And an artist that she was, she sketched the face on a piece of paper and kept it with her. Round about 1910, when her husband, Paul Richard, a French politician, wanted to get elected to the French Senate, and he wanted to visit French India for votes, she told him, "We hear that there were many wise men in India. I would like you to find out whether there are any still wise men left." And she said, if you meet anyone like that, she gave him a diagram, the Star of David. And she said, ask him what is the precise significance of this symbol. So when Monsieur Richard came to India, he inquired, are there any wise men here? Sri Aurobindo had just reached French India as a political exile, and he was known for his learning, for his writings for his work. And they said, oh yes, somebody has come from India recently, and they took Monsieur Richard to him, to this Indian gentleman, whom he met, whom he talked, by whom he was impressed, for his grasp of the world situation and the movements of forces, building towards the human unity and all that. And then at the end he showed him that Star of David, with that triangle, one apex pointing upwards and an intersecting triangle pointing downwards. Sri Aurobindo saw it and said, the upward triangle represents the aspiration of earth, matter, life and mind, to the divine grace. And the downward triangle represents the response of the divine grace, light and consciousness. And when he went back, this lady was satisfied that that was the right significance. And no wonder in 1914, 4 years thence, when he again had to come for electioneering campaign, she accompanied him. And as they landed in India, as the train in which she was approaching Pondicherry, where Sri Aurobindo lived, and where she was to work for 50 or 60, 55 years. Well, later on, when they were about 10 miles from Pondicherry, she saw a huge column of light coming from the center of the town. She had no doubt on seeing it that here must be that spiritual afflatus which had been attracting her. And when she arrived, they had an appointment to see him at 3:30 in the afternoon. And as soon as she saw him there, she recognized this is the same face, this is the same person who was coming to her in dreams, and the face was exact. Later, that picture was lithographed, and all of us were given copies. That is there on record. And she met him, and both found that they were pursuing identical goals, for working for the new age, an advent of a divine harmony on earth, a release and a divine manifestation of knowledge, love, power in an unimpeded and plenary manner on earth, consequent on the descent of a truth consciousness, a truth power called the Gnostic power or the supramental power in the human consciousness. And they saw that they both were being prepared for two ends of earth towards the same goal, one in the east and one in the west. And so they met. They started a journal heralding the birth of a new age called the Arya, in English and French. It was there that Sri Aurobindo presented the body of knowledge that had been revealed to him during 4 years of exclusive explorations of his consciousness. The doctrine of life divine, which says that the goal of man is a divine perfection of his life here on earth. The process is evolution of consciousness. And how? The highest knowledge is not a knowledge of the mind, but knowledge by identity of consciousness. How? Delight of existence is the base of life. And if we don't have that joy of life, it is because we have lost the art of life. To learn the art of life, to tune ourselves once again to that delight of life, is the message of the science of life, which is yoga. And he wrote extensively on what is called the synthesis of yoga, where he built a practical discipline to translate this philosophy of life divine into practice. He also, to see if there was corroboration to his vision and knowledge at different levels, he traced the history of mankind on the political level and traced how mankind has passed from the primitive state, tribes, clans, developing through the group soul stage, nation stage, has now arrived at a stage when a world unity is inevitable. A world unity based upon a spiritual sense of oneness. He also traced the sociological development of man from the very symbolic and the religious age, whether in the Greece and Mediterranean countries or in countries like India, how man first awoke to a sense of wonder, intuitively sensed the certain existence of certain power, and learned to commune with the higher powers whom he called gods, and later how that stage was, whether the truth receded, it turned into a conventional in the typal age, how the conventions mounted up so much that man ultimately revolted and initiated an individualist age beginning with the French Revolution, and how man has made a mess of things after 200 years, and there is a great search going on all over the world, feeling for the wells of life, the secret of life, and how we are in the midst of a subjective age where authors, writers, artists are fumbling and produce what it may appear to us but chaotic surveys of things, and how we are on the threshold of a spiritual age, which is being signalized by the outburst of a new interest all over the world in matters of spirit. He thus corroborated from different angles. But at this time, when this journal was being conducted, the First World War broke out, and mother had to return to France as her husband was conscripted for war. However, in 1916, she went to Japan, stayed there for 4 years, and discovered the artistic genius of the Japanese race. She was highly impressed by the Japanese sensitivity to aesthetic value. And it was in Japan that she had a number of experiences, one of which I shall narrate, as it would in a way continue certain points that I had made yesterday. I wanted to mention it yesterday, but it got out of my mind. And when she was in Japan, just 1916, the World War ended in 1918. Between 1918 and 1920, somewhere in 1919, there was an outbreak of influenza, a severe epidemic in the place where she was staying. And the epidemic was so strong that people were dying in large numbers. All the medicines, store of medicines was exhausted. But she had to meet certain friend at the other end of the town. So she came out, and as she was walking, she found people were so terror-struck. They had all gas masks on their faces, and they were walking very carefully. And she went to her friend. Though she had absolute confidence and courage, when she met the friend and came back, she developed a fever. She says that the universal suggestion in the atmosphere of the virulence of this disease, that must have acted. Though consciously, she didn't allow any such thing to come in. Unconsciously or subconsciously, a collective suggestion like this does leave an impress. So when she got back home, she got severe fever. The landlady called the doctor, and the doctor said here are these cures. They are the last packets left with me. In the whole town there is no more medicine. Mother told him, thank you very much, but give these tablets to somebody who will really use them and needs them. I do not want to use them. I don't take medicine. But then said, something will happen to you. She said, let us see. And she had that temperature, heavy, 105, 106, for 3 continuous days. And on the third day, she saw a headless being in military uniform without a head attacking her. She thought first it was just an occult phenomenon, and she, as she normally did, she pushed it out. But the person would again come and started attacking from all sides. Then mother felt there was a danger of death, and she summoned all her inner latent spiritual power and gave a fight lasting quite about an hour, at the end of which the intruder, he fell back. She woke up, and slowly the temperature came down. And from the next day the newspapers reported that the epidemic is abating, and within a few days normalcy was restored. And she said one interesting thing was that the uniformed body without a head was of a European soldier who had been killed in the First World War. Many who were killed under such conditions, sudden death, they had a great frustration, vengeance, a kind of vindictiveness on humanity, that they had to die without any reason, without having done anything for that, to deserve that punishment. And they were full of sullen resentment, and they would attack everything. And it was one of those spirits without the head who came to attack her, because she was a source of good. She was a source of a divine consciousness, one who had received it. And they were out to destroy all that was good. Now this has been recorded, and it should be available in book form for those who want to study the implications deeper. And she came back to India in 1920, lived with the slow community that was growing around Sri Aurobindo. And in 1926, when Sri Aurobindo had a great spiritual realization, when the over-mental consciousness, that is a cosmic consciousness, in which one feels always one with the world, has always a cosmic view, and there is always a play of cosmic delight. That consciousness became natural to him. The next step was to try for this Gnostic consciousness for man, for mankind, as the next step in his evolution after the mental stage was completed. For that purpose he chose to retire from meeting people and asked the mother to take charge of this community, and told his disciples to regard her as the mother. Now this was quite a hard nut to swallow for those revolutionary Indians who had followed Sri Aurobindo in exile, who were attracted to his philosophy, to be asked to recognize a foreign lady, a French lady, as their mother, and to accept her as their guru or teacher. So some of them grumbled, and they wrote to him. One of them had the courage to ask him, why? Why should we recognize her as the mother? In answer, Sri Aurobindo wrote overnight a reply which is considered as one of the most beautiful pieces in English literature, called The Four Powers of the Mother. He explained that in this universe there is a great power, a puissance, a divine conscious force at work. And this conscious force, achieving things, sustaining things, creating things, is called Shakti in the East. And this universal power flows into four main streams. The power, the divine power that manifests knowledge, builds knowledge, organizes knowledge. She is the first who is called in the East Maheshwari, the divine goddess of knowledge and wisdom. There is a second stream of power, of strength, an irresistible strength that puts down all falsehood and evil and promotes the growth of divine flame. She is called in the East Mahakali, the great mother of destruction. And third, there is the mother of harmony, beauty, wealth, prosperity, production. She is called Mahalakshmi, the mother of learning, the mother of wealth. And fourth, one who works with the greatest eye for perfection in detail, service, and that is Mahasaraswati, one who is the most long suffering and laboring with man at the lowest level, work and service. And he says, at this moment, all these four manifestations, four powers of the universal Shakti are embodied in her. That is why I ask you to accept her as your spiritual mother. That settled it. That settled it. And many of us were to see the truth of this perception, this foresight, this vision. And thousands of lives have been changed. When she organized this motley crowd of people who were living around Sri Aurobindo into a community, she opened the doors wide to people of all communities, all classes and races, and said, everyone who is willing to take a plunge into this adventure of consciousness will be supported, maintained and helped by me. Only you have to become a member of this collectivity, participate in its outer work, 6 to 8 hours per day, doing the work that is allotted to you, not out of desire and ego motive, not out of competition with others, not for earning status, but with humility and as a labor of love for the divine. Work. She was the first person in modern spiritual India to emphasize the sacredness of work. How work is the body's best prayer to the divine. How work is a field for the development of consciousness, and work is also the arena for the radiation of a liberated consciousness. And she laid greater importance on work, consecrated work, as a means of disciplining and orienting one's consciousness than on meditation, or study. And she organized. Only she insisted, since the objective of this adventure and experiment is the transformation of human consciousness into the divine, conquest and ultimate conquest of death, and winning of immortality, the immortality that is of the soul, to be communicated and shared by the physical body. That being the objective, she insisted that on every one, man or woman, who joined the ashram had to forego sex. All sexual energy, like other energies, had to be conserved and utilized for the enriching, nourishing and transformation of the physical body. It is now 50 years. The ashram grew from 1926, when it had 20 people, till today it has 2,000 people. Miraculously it has grown with all these conditions. Of course, that was the only condition practically. There have been people from all parts of the world, about 400 of them from the different parts outside India, the rest within India. And she gave complete freedom to each one to pursue his path, his quest. All that she insisted was, you recognize that there is a divine consciousness, and that consciousness is to be received and embodied in us. The way is a dynamic surrender to what is above you, and to cultivate the mental faculties, the emotional faculties, the physical faculties, the will, the willpower, all towards this orientation, drawing them away from selfish pursuits, lower nature, and direct them upwards and inwards. Each person to determine his own pace. No common programs, no common uniform or dress, but each one had his own routine. Of course, for sake of order, where office work or outer work was concerned, a certain timings had to be observed. But otherwise, each individual had his own program. A unique experiment in India, where spiritual pursuit was aimed not for salvation, not for escape from life and death, but to affirm God's values, God's presence on earth. Each person was told that every moment of your life there is a challenge to your sincerity, a challenge to your sense of free choice. Every moment you have to decide whether you are going to choose the hard way which leads towards the divine, or you will slide back choosing the easier way. That is where, she said, there is a free will given to each person, and each one determines his destiny. And she insisted that there was perfect equality even in those days, about 50 years ago, between men and women. Particularly in a country like India, where in any ceremony, any public meeting, women sit on one side and men sit on other, even today. She brought about an order where both would work and strive shoulder to shoulder. She introduced this free education. She said, I will not sell education. And she founded a center of education where instruction is completely free. Those students who can bear, their parents can bear the expenses, they pay only for their stay and food in the dormitories, hostels. The rest, she has introduced a revolutionary concept of education, where all examinations, degrees, diplomas, tests are abolished, where each child is given a certain freedom to discover its own talents, under the unseen supervision of elders, who take it as a mission of life and not as a means for earning their livelihood. There are about 700 children from so many countries of the world, so many teachers who are attracted and have offered to work free in that place, teachers who have gathered from different parts, and all are cooperating in this unique experiment of what as mother called, freeing the child from the tyranny, ignorant tyranny of their parents. And this experiment of giving full freedom to man, woman and children, all towards an emancipation of the human spirit in these different categories from old social conventions and compulsions. Teaching man that it is not enough to meditate, but it is indispensable to introduce and express the meditation spirit, the results of meditation in the day-to-day life. She it was who related every inner development to the outer life. Outer life and outer consciousness has to be elevated by every inner gain. She strove till she was 96. She had that great enthusiasm for the perfection of man, the transformation of human consciousness. And she arrived at a stage when she discovered that each cell in the physical body had to be persuaded, had to be cajoled, and got to accept the necessity of transferring its allegiance to the universal suggestion of death, to the fact of immortality. And she said, she started in the last 10 years of her life, when she was 80 or 85, to work upon those cells. There is a certain method, a procedure in the working of this yogic principle of transformation. The divine consciousness, the light, has to be brought down step by step, naturalized, established in the mind, in the heart, in the life regions, and then established in each physical cell. Before the body can be freed from the law of death, it has the constituent cells have to be taught to change their habit of function. So she conducted a great research, which is expected to run into about 13 volumes of her experiments and perceptions. What are the difficulties? How an individual, a man, does not live alone. It is easy enough to salvage oneself. It is easy enough to save oneself. But if one wants to bring about a change in the law of nature, to forge a new step in evolution, man has to recognize and is forced to recognize that he is part of a large system. That whatever happens on earth, whatever happens in collectivity and humanity, has its influence, has its repercussions in the individual. And there were many times when she would feel uneasy, when she would scratch her arm, and some disciple would come and say, shall we apply particular lotion or eau de cologne? She said, no, it is not physical. Some persons in this ashram are behaving wrongly, and that is why I am having these repercussions. And she said, each cell first would revolt against the suggestion to change its rhythm. And when she would apply her suggestion, will to change it, there would be an intense pain in the body, and there would be agony. And those around who are attending would think there is something physically wrong, would call the doctors, and she would laugh and say there is nothing. And after persistent working upon the cell, when the cell agreed to change, there would be a dance of delight. And she said the bliss was so much at that time that it was hard to contain. And she said there were so many thousands and thousands of cells. Each one has to be worked upon, if not by her, by someone, till this law of death was changed. And it was when she was in the midst of this process that her body, when she was 96, started wilting under the pressure of this work. She used to have intense agony, pain. And when her disciples, who were great doctors and surgeons, would go to certain palliatives, she would say, "It is not physical pain that bothers me. It is the falsehood of the world that is torturing." Anyone, Sri Aurobindo says in Savitri, hard is the world redeemer's task. He who would take out the pain of men has to undergo the pain of men. And she had to undergo all this because, in her own way, from her own angle, she strove and worked for humanity. And as the last contribution of her work, of her life, towards world peace, she initiated a project of a planetary city called Aurobindo, where she announced a project of about 10,000 acres of land with 50,000 people from all over the world, dedicating themselves to the ideal of human unity, belonging to no country but as living as world citizens, rising above all castes, creeds, class consciousness and religions, and living together, exploring their consciousness, trying to add new dimensions, wanting to translate her old dream into a reality. She wrote that there should be on earth a place where men can live without being obliged to be subjects of this government or that, live as citizens of one world, where money would no longer be the sovereign lord, but all wealth would be a common wealth held in trust from God for all, where everyone would have absolute equality, where the opportunity to participate in spheres of art, music, fine arts, they would not be limited by considerations of wealth, but by one's capacity to participate in them, where children would be educated without loosening their contact with the soul. And she went on to write. She said, people will say I was too ambitious, but that is my dream and I have made a beginning. And that is Aurobindo, where there are already about 450 people from 25 countries of the world, heroic people who have cut off from their past moorings and have come forward, artists, technicians, engineers, agriculturists, students, people from all walks of life, architects, all working there 16 to 18 hours per day when necessary, building a new township, a city in what is called practically a desert, a place that was chosen because in her occult vision she had seen a new city of light coming up on that hill. And there 125 countries sent their earth at her request through their representatives. All were symbolically gathered and put in an urn of a lotus size, which is the center of the whole developing township, where each individual is put on his mettle. There is complete freedom to men and women and children. Children are not obliged, are not taught in closed buildings as classrooms, but in the open. Men and women are not forced to stay together even when they do not love each other. A new experiment is made, and freedom is given with the understanding and the hope that it will be rightly used, and liberty will not be turned into license. The township is in the offing. There are certain difficulties due to certain difficulties of human nature when it is called upon to change. But these are teething troubles. But there her work is. She has given a complete new orientation to spiritual effort all over the world. And she has said, she has demonstrated in her life that every spiritual illumination must have and can have a corresponding elevating effect on humanity. There are people in this country, in other countries, who never met her, whom she did not meet on the physical level. But she said, there are people in this world whom I have not met this time, but who are following my teachings and whom I meet in a subtle way. I have had occasion to meet some of them here in this country, who on the day of her passing from this earth, they were visited by her. She appeared there. Some of them had heard of her, nobody knew that she had passed. And it was only last year that Edward Thompson, the leader of Lindisfarne, he told us how he was totally surprised to see her in his room saying hello. And there are some other people, they have suddenly felt her, and those who have strangely responded to her call, who are wanting to realize her dream even on the American continent. She had a great sympathy for this continent. At one time she said America is too immature to understand these things, but she can contribute to the divine work through her wealth. But later, during the last few years of her life, she said, I have an impression that the new thing will start somewhere there in America. And I have had abundant corroboration, confirmation of this perception of her at different levels of American humanity. If I am able to talk to the American mind today, establish a certain communion, it is because my consciousness has been completely converted, changed, and put in a particular wavelength by her, so that I find myself at home in any part of the world. I lived with her for 38 years without leaving that place at any time. It was only after she has passed that, on an inner urge to share with all what she has given and to learn from others what they have achieved, I have been moving up and learning from friends, sharing with them, always under the benign guidance, in the close proximity of her presence, which I do not miss for a single moment, whether she has been in the physical body or not. She was a great spiritual power, spiritual presence, who has changed the lives and destiny of thousands and thousands. It was left to her to say that if I see a person even for a fraction of a second, I hold myself responsible for his spiritual welfare, not only in this birth but for in all births to come. And she said it with those blue eyes boring into you with that diamond light, with that piercing voice which had a ring of its own. One would not believe that one was on earth. That is what she was. That is what she means to us who have lived with her. Each day was an education. To watch her was an education. She never wrote books, as I said, but what she taught became a scripture. There was none who, however depressed, however suffering, who would see her and would not smile. She was one whom Sri Aurobindo describes in Savitri, whose smile could persuade a dead, lacerated heart to smile. That she was. I could keep you engaged here the whole night, describing what she was, what she did, how she handled all the problems, all the psychological problems. It was, he said, I have 2,000 people here, but each one is a psychological impossibility that I have to face. But with great patience, with great indulgence, she had, the patience of a teacher and the heart of a mother. That was the one. Any questions? Yeah. Yes, please. Can you repeat it? I like you to repeat the question. Yes, please. Yes, I understand the question. That related only to the ashram community, which is now 50 years old. But in this new community, which has been founded on the basis of experience of the older community, it is not an ashram. It is a new age community. So there is no such bar. You understand? That sex is no bar. But also, there is a new feature, and that is no marriages are allowed there. Mother does not believe that marriage will continue to be a feature of life in a new age. She said you can't compel people to live together if they don't love each other. So a man and a woman can live and should live together as long as they love, as long as they can give themselves to each other. So that freedom is given, association, living together as long as they love. But she does not want a church marriage or a legal marriage, because the laws of divorce are not as convenient in the East as in these countries. It is extremely difficult to get a divorce in our country, and we are subject to the law of the land. Here, I have read in journals, I don't know if I am wrong, I may be corrected, that it is possible to go to some place, Las Vegas or something like that, and get divorced within a week. But there you will have to fight for 1 year. So, she does not want to force people to live together. It is a part of her freedom. The family system, marriage and private property, they are not recognized in that society. Nobody can own private wealth. Each one is maintained and supplied what he wants, but nobody earns from it. If he has anything, he gives it to the township when he joins. Similarly, there is no father and mother, father and children, they can't, They can't necessarily claim to live together and have a family life. She expects people to develop a consciousness that the whole world is my family, not just those who are related to me by blood. So that is an old conception which has served its purpose and is now standing in the way of enlargement of consciousness. So there are quite a number of children who are being born. Only they are not given the second name, only the first name. At the moment, the mothers of the children take care of the children. But the idea is, within some foreseeable time, some kind of arrangement will be made by which experts in child care, education, these people will take charge of all the children who will be brought up in the best possible scientific way, without being left to the mercy of parents who are not always understanding. At the moment, their mothers are looking after the children. There is a kind of community of mothers who run school, an open school, in groups. No. She said whoever, the work has to continue from where she was obliged to leave by somebody. This is a work for mankind, the whole humanity. So it has to be worked out on earth by somebody in a physical body. She confidently envisaged that in the new age, sex will not continue to be the means for procreation. Nature is searching for some other way of creating. And that is why we see so many experiments in different parts of the globe to produce without sexual congress. What you said, the coning or something like that, these are all part of this general movement. We shall not laugh at them, but they represent a certain urge in nature to go beyond that process for creation. She anticipated also that with the development of new consciousness, the pendulous organs of the human body, male and female, would gradually drop off. When I told this to an audience of young Americans in Esalen, they all got very angry. And then I said, it's not now, it will be after. Pardon? We have not seen her to be wrong. That's what I can say. Essentially, in these important matters, she has never been proved to be wrong. Never. Because she never functioned from the mind. Unless she saw a thing, she would not stop. She didn't reason. Certain tentative decisions were changed. Tentative. When she took, she said it would be tentative. Let us try like that. But certain fundamental things he never had to change. Even when we felt they were improbable, later we realized she was right. Would you like her to be wrong in this matter? In the matter that we are mentioning? I'm joking, don't take it seriously. Yes? She said these are all baseless fears. There will be no catastrophes. There will be no apocalyptic happenings. You understand? Man has come to stay. Man alone has shown the amazing capacity to change without change of form. And nature will not have to cast man aside as she had to cast aside the mastodon or other people. She saw a glorious future for mankind. She said that one at the gates of this world are the wonderful riches waiting. And she repeated what Sri Aurobindo writes in Savitri, that the earth can be saved if only the earth consents to be saved.